climaxes! Hyakujuu Sentai Gaoranger!
Welcome back to the Gao Silver Show with me, Gao Silver. Today we're starting a new series, the Gao Ranger review series. As some of you may remember or even found the channel through, I made a series of videos talking about Ghost Ranger in 3 parts. It was a fun little experiment and literally led to my most successful video ever. So I wondered, what other Sentai I could review in this format? With the one I've set my sights on being 2001's Hyakujuu Sentai Gaoranger. But what is Gaoranger? That's what we're here to find out. So grab some drinks and lay back as we talk about the first 14 episodes of the 25th Super Sentai series.
So you wanna be a master of? Do you have the skills to be? We all live in a Pokemon world. I wanna be the greatest master of them all. Pokemon. Go-Axis!
But before we get into the show proper, let's talk about some brief production facts and aesthetics for the series. The previous Super Sentai series, Mirai Sentai Time Ranger, while very well beloved for its characters and story, didn't do too hot in terms of toy sales. So when making its direct successor, there was a greater emphasis on making the show more marketable to kids, with the animals represented in each Gao Ranger being chosen due to their perceived marketability to the audience. Alongside that, this series would be one of the first Super Sentai to incorporate CGI more heavily in its production. Seen with things like all the power animals being created with passable at best 2001 CGI, alongside on-screen graphics really perform the roll call, a trend which will continue with the next 2 Sentai after it. There's also the inclusion of the narrator into the show. A narrator isn't an uncommon occurrence in Sentai, but Gao Ranger really likes having its narrator talk, which on one hand kinda works because the show sort of positions the tale of the Gao Rangers like it's a story at the very beginning of the show, and there's some moments where he does add something. So there's at least a bit of sense to it. On the other hand though, he kinda just kills a lot of tension and interest, talking in scenes that probably would be enhanced if the show just let them play out without him talking. Like we got a Hall of Fame yapper as a narrator is what I'm basically saying. But to get back into talking about the animal motif, they also wanted to incorporate aspects of the animals and the fighting styles of the Rangers in a different way than previous animal Sentai. Even things like all 5 Rangers having claws in their hands, or the multiple scenes of Gao Yellow flying and Gao Blue swimming in suits. On that point, the Gao Ranger suits are actually really good. Like the choice to push how animalistic suits are supposed to be, these are probably the best looking animal-based Sentai. Gao Rangers are even good looking out of suit. The mostly black bomber jackets with hints of the Rangers colors, and the logo with the words Spirit of the Earth on the back is pure flame to be honest. Also, to list off one of Gao Ranger's many firsts, we have the fact that they're the first Super Sentai that have phones with their main transformation device, for things known as the G phone. They're okay. Not the best henshin device in the world, but not the worst either. I like how they can transform the animals though, that's cool. Also, Gao Ranger had the first combined weapon Sentai that's a sword, known as the Hyakujuu Ken, or Evil Crushing 100 Beast Sword. Yes, Hyakujuu means 100 beasts, that's why the show's all about animals. They also have the Beast King Sword, which they put their Gao jewels into in order to summon the power animals. I really like them. Kinda want to own one to be honest. But to stop me from continuing on and on about the aesthetics, let's finally get into the story and character to the show proper. Gao Ranger follows the story of the 5 Gao warriors. The first one we meet being
戦士になるつもりなら今までの名前は捨てろ。俺はガオイエロー、お前はガオレット。
Oh yeah, the Gao Rangers technically don't have real names, as they give them up once becoming Gao Rangers. We're not gonna follow that because I'm not just calling them colors all video. Interesting idea though, and helps push how much these people gave up for this cause. But anyway, we first meet Kakeru, a veterinarian, who can tame elephants, and is recruited by the 4 other Gao Rangers. Gaku or Gao Yellow, Kai or Gao Blue, Totaro or Gao Black, and Sei or Gao White, to become Gao Red and fight against the Orgs, or recipients created from pollution that want to destroy the Earth. That's basically it in terms of the story for the show in these 14 episodes, leading to the characters having to carry the majority of the weight in terms of the show's entertainment, which they arguably are able to do. Yeah, the Gao Rangers themselves aren't the best group of protagonists. They aren't horrible, and I kinda like them, but they're definitely pretty bland in a lot of ways. Starting off with Kakeru, who's pretty basic as a character, having the standard Red Ranger personality, being this very excitable, nice guy, who has to protect the people around him. Nothing special really, but I like the vibes I get off him when he does it. Especially seen in episode 2, where Kakeru tries to see if he can reason with the Orgs instead of just having to kill them all. And then he gets massively disappointed once he's confronted with the truth that the Orgs are just pure evil beings who want to kill people, with Bro just having to push through the devastation to fight them all. After him, you get Gaku, the typical kind of douchebag character on the team, often messing with the other characters due to their apparent lack of maturity compared to him. Especially Kakeru, due to him being made their leader despite Gaku having a whole year of experience over him as a Gao Ranger. As well, each Gao Ranger came in at a different time, with Yellow being the first member. But eventually, as episodes go on, Gaku was able to respect Kakeru more and more. On my first watch, Gaku wasn't really a favorite of mine. With this rewatch of these 14 episodes, he grew to be a favorite of mine, with him being probably the most consistently interesting of the main 5. Even in the episodes that aren't about him, like scenes such as when he tries to look cool by making fun of Kakeru, not being able to help Yellow Lion while getting injured in the process, is what makes him actually fun to watch. Hope he gets a little bit more episodes about his like backstory though. After him, we get Kai and Sotaro, who I'm pairing together because they're best friends. Kai's a very stupid and goofy guy, being treated as the youngest member of the group despite not actually being that. And Sotaro is a very timid but friendly giant. They actually have one of the best episodes in this batch, that being episode 4, where we learn about how they became best friends. As one day as Gao Rangers, Sotaro let his fear of heights overtake him and almost caused him to fall to his death, before Kai saved him, teaching him the philosophy of never giving up, as they all have only one life to live, so they gotta push themselves even in the hardest situations. A very basic message, but a good one, and shows why a timid guy like Sotaro got so attached to a guy like Kai, as he's the person to give him the confidence to be stronger. Sotaro is also the only one of the characters whose name is never actually said on screen. I'd look it up. They're really committed to that bit. After them, we get to Sei, the sole female member of the group and the actual youngest member. Despite this, she shows great maturity in her displays of emotional intelligence, seeing her and I think the show's best episode so far. Episode 8, where Kakeru loses his memories of being a Gao Ranger and goes back to his job of being a veterinarian. Something which Sei convinces herself might be the best outcome for him, as when the two of them came to town, she sees how much the people around there value Kakeru, and thinks about how he might be wasting his time fighting as a Gao Ranger instead of continuing to help people out as a veterinarian. Something which Gaku thinks is stupid as well. Kakeru already knew what he had to give up when he joined them, which, while correct, doesn't validate Sei's thinking that maybe bro would be truly happy if he got the chance to go back to his normal life. It's an interesting conflict, which the other episodes were this character based, which I think is the real issue of the Gao Rangers as characters. Cause like on paper, they have about as much personality as any other Sentai team. They just don't got a lot of episodes that actually use their personalities in many interesting ways. Rather just focus on whatever new Gao anime we need to find this week. Which isn't inherently bad because a lot of cool fight scenes and moments come from that. But it doesn't help this otherwise kind of bland group of characters feel any less bland. Episodes that are supposed to be about one of them barely get to touch on any part of their character at all. Hopefully this is something they improve upon in the next group episodes, even if I still like them to a degree. Also, there's the Gao Rangers priestess, Totomu, who lives at their base, Gao Rock. She's cool. It's fun seeing her try to understand modern society and stuff. You know, she's just like basically a glorified monster finder half the time. On the other side of things though, you got the 3 generals of the orgs, those being Susu, Yabaiba, and Shuten. They're okay. Susui and Yabaiba are pretty decent comedy relief, with Susui being an older lady always made fun of for being old, and Yabaiba just a goofball with little care in the world besides destruction. Shuten on the other hand is pretty boring, just being a giant eye who wants to kill the Gao Rangers. Good thing he gets killed off this early. Hopefully the next guy is better. Also there's the god of the orgs known as the Org Master, but he doesn't talk. Wonder if that'll come back up again. But amidst all this stuff that sort of rubber bands in terms of quality, there is one aspect of Gao Ranger which I'm able to unanimously praise, that being the power animals, and how they're treated in both a story and toy sense. The Power Animals is the very first Super Sentai mech line heavily focused on auxiliary pieces, which are pieces outside of the base mech combination that combine to make other combination, a toy-like gimmick that many Sentai afterwards would copy. But as the originator of the gimmick, Gao Ranger shows off the start of many of the plot points that many of these later shows would copy, and I had a certain amount of joy seeing all these unique ideas implemented into the show. From Gao Blue getting visions of the future due to a special crane that holds Gao Giraffe, the Gao Gorilla being a god to an ancient group of people, being some that help the Gao Rangers but these people from the past. Details that don't fix the issue of how they gain these power animals being kind of detached from any form of character writing for the main cast, but I think it really sells this idea of them being these divine and all-powerful beings, making the collecting of them all the more rewarding. Kind of like capturing a legendary Pokemon, which is supposedly supposed to be an inspiration from Gao Ranger and the Power Animals. Can't quite find sources on it, but I can see with how popular it was around the time. Let me stop talking like the first Pokemon games I played weren't X and Y. Alongside the Power Animals, there's also something known as the Soul Bird, which becomes a new cockpit for the mechs Gao King and Gao Muscle. Both fire designs, by the way. I also like the Soul Bird, but I can see why future cockpits would just go back to what the Gao Rangers were using before, because this thing is kind of cramped, in all honesty. But with that, I kind of talk about everything worth talking about with Gao Ranger so far. So all in all, Gao Ranger is kind of just okay for now. While the aesthetics are super impressive, the characters themselves fall a little short due to the way the show is written. Despite all of that, I find myself still liking it due to the way it kind of represents the most basic and raw aspects of what makes a Sentai cool in a way. This can best be seen in the episode where the Soul Bird debuts, as it says the Gao Rangers have to lose the ability to transform and almost die in battle. Our heroes gain the ability to transform once more, and the triumphant music plays as they defeat Shuten once and for all. It's a basic thing that any Sentai could do, but I like seeing Sentai do those things, and when Gao Ranger does it, it's as cool as any other Sentai doing it. I don't know, maybe I'm too easily impressed or something, but things like that are what allow Gao Ranger to be enjoyable to me, despite how kind of middle of the road it is of a show in all reality. Hopefully my opinion of it will improve even more when I watch the next batch of episodes. But until then, see you in the next Gao Ranger review.
みんな大ニュースだ。
ただいまガオレンジャーキャンペーン実施
抽選で番組に出演できたり、
他にも素敵なプレゼントが当たっちゃうよ。
詳しくはこちらのテレホンセンターまで。みんなの応募待ってます。ガッガッガッガッガオ
Welcome to the second part of the Gao Ranger review series, covering episodes 15 through 31 of the series. We have a lot to discuss, so let's just get into it by talking about the story so far. After Gao Rangers defeat the first Geek Orb, Shuten, a new one known as arrives in his place, causing the Gao Rangers even more pain and chaos. But that's not as important as the revived Duke Org Roki returned to settle a millennium-long grudge with the Gao Rangers as well. Are our heroes finally cooked? Well, we both know the answer, but how it happens is pretty cool. As you can probably tell, almost immediately gets overshadowed by Roki in this arc, so we'll mainly be talking about him. Isn't bad though, having a bit more of a personality and goals than Shuten, but not by much. Honestly, the most interesting thing with is Susue and Yobaiba's relationship with him, as he's way more dismissive towards the two of them and their antics, and for a lot more comedic potential as the two try to prove themselves to the apathetic boss, as such as the episode where Shueshue steals some guide on how to be a better employee, and they end up justifying their L in the end due to the book encouraging that it's best to throw your fellow employee under the bus in times of crisis. Oh yeah, that's another thing to mention. Despite the show upping its stakes quite considerably with the Roki arc, the show becomes a lot more funny. Not to say the first arc didn't have some humor in it, but from this point forward, the show tries way harder in being comedic, which I really enjoy actually, as it makes the show a lot more fun to watch. While there's some instances where they kind of go too hard with some of the jokes, Gao Yellow's English is very far in between in terms of generally being funny. But almost everything that has to do with Kakeru and his "I'm a veterinarian" joke, it's fairly funny. Like when the Monster of the Week replaces a bunch of people's voices with cat noises, he understands them perfectly for no other reason than him being a veterinarian. Had me cracking up, especially when the rest of the team is blatantly just like, what does that mean? Also, I want to go back to the thing I mentioned about Shushue and Yobaiba in that episode, with the two of them setting up a haunted house to defeat the Gao Rangers, and the Gao Rangers just rush through it and come out asking the two of them just how stupid they think they are. Just funny stuff, man. But yeah, let's finally get back to talking about Roki, and why he's not only pretty cool, but actually important for the entirety of Sentai.
Duke Org Roki.
So I think everyone would agree when I say Roki is the best villain in Gao Ranger, right? Whether it be due to his cool design and voice, he just has a level of aura around him that none of these other Gao Rangers villains can even imagine having. There's also the fact that he actually elevates both the Gao Ranger and Org side of the conflict. The Org side by giving Swiftway and Yobaiba another guy to bounce their comedy routine off of, because they hate Roki because unlike them, he can actually do his job well. Leading to many scenes where they probably could have helped Roki fight against the Gao Rangers, they decide not to just out of spite. On the Gao Ranger side of things, he helps to make them feel like a more interesting unit. Him finally giving them that little spark that makes them more enduring despite how basic they are. As when they're confronted with Roki's grudge against them, they actually try and figure out why he feels that way, and what they could do to possibly end it, making me want to see them actually succeed in understanding and overcoming Roki. A task made way harder once Roki one by one takes the Gao Rangers' power animals. Scenes that, well, fall kind of short due to the fact that almost all the power animals are done in a rather weird way, still creates very well done scenes, and made me more attached to these characters, pursuing the way they try to stay strong in the face of that happening to them. Whether it be Kakeru comforting Kai and the rest of the team, or Tomoe comforting Gaku. Gaku's instance being way worse, as throughout the entire episode where he had his power animals taken away from him, he was fighting against the constant embarrassment he feels for not being able to kill the first Org he ever fought. For to finally defeat that Org and then just a few minutes later have his power animals taken from him is just the ultimate slap in the face to his confidence. It's a really good episode, but you may be asking, why Roki removes the Gao Rangers' power animals? Oh, that's simple, to combine them with his mech, Gao Hunter, made out of 3 power animals he just always had for some reason. Yeah, in the middle of all the jokes and savagery, Roki is prone to many weird quirks for an Org. Whether it be the fact that he not only has that can perfectly control 3 power animals, but that seemingly being impossible for an Org, or his lack of interest in killing any human or animal who isn't one of the Gao Rangers, such as when he blatantly attacked an Org for hurting a dog, or when he uncharacteristically healed Sei with herbs similar to the ones that Tomoe used back in the base to help them, or when he defeated Gao Yellow, he started bleeding red blood instead of the green goop that Orgs usually do, or when he thinks of the past and only imagines this one random human instead of himself, or how there's an episode he's only in for a single scene because he can't fight under a new moon, and then Kakeru mentions that he saw the dog Roki protected hang out with some guy skinny dipping in a lake at night at the exact same time. Yeah, you couldn't tell, Roki is actually a human. A twist which, when you ignore me just putting all the details out there like this, is done pretty solidly for what it's worth. His human identity being the 6th Gao warrior from 1,000 years ago in the Heian period. Having became Roki so he could create Gao Hunter and defeat the ultimate Org Hyakumaru. His grudge against the Gao Rangers having been created due to him forgetting his human identity and being sealed by his friends in the past. So after another battle, you get 2 more power animals that make their mech a soccer player, with help from the precursor of all power animals, Gao God. Yes, they do literally need God to intervene in order to defeat Roki. It'll be more important next time. Roki is dead, and we're left with Tsukimaro Ogami, also known as Shirogane, which I'll call him for the rest of the video because I like it better. I guess we gotta rename this to the Shirogane section. But anyway, Shirogane is a decent 6. Like the rest of the Gao Rangers, he's pretty generic as a character, basically embodying the 6th Ranger archetype. Like he's literally a lone wolf, and we talk about how he'll just go wherever the wind takes him. A pure embodiment of edgelord. But I like that type of character. I do think there is some complexity to him. as he harbors a unique sense of self-hatred, feeling himself to be completely at fault for what happened with Roki, because if he was stronger, he wouldn't have thought his successors and become a tool of the orgs he hated so much. Decided to not even work alongside Gao Rangers because he feels like he doesn't have the right to, which is stupid because they don't see it that way, and it literally doesn't benefit him. As the moment he tries to fight against the orgs, he utterly fails with his power animals, leaving him because he only finds the orgs in order to satiate his hatred. Something the Gao Warriors are not supposed to do, as instead they should be fighting out of a righteous sense to protect others. Instead of fighting like a Gao warrior, Shirogane is fighting like an orc. But this changes when Shirogane sees the Gao Rangers fighting orc crew, the power animals he stole from them, and can do nothing to help. Their pain and cries causing him to fight against the orc, knowing full well he could die in the process. But he doesn't, as his action causes his power animals to come back to him and create the G4 embrace, transforming the Gao Silver for the first time, as his soul, pitch black and full of self-hatred, is cracked by the shining light of justice, starting a journey of his edgy facade being broken more and more over the show. Particularly broken by Seiya and Tomu, which is kind of cute, as bro's really shy when it comes to them generally seeing through his facade for the nice guy he is. It stops being cute once you realize one of these girls is 16, and even about the 1,000 years he was asleep, he's a grown man. The other girl is his dead girlfriend's granddaughter.
Brother,
But to get away from that concerning thought, now that we got Gao Silver, let's talk about some aesthetic stuff with him. When it comes to Gao Silver and his aesthetics, he'll be going from his general just design and place on the toy line to the world building he provides as a character. When it comes to Gao Silver's design, in and of itself, yeah, he's pretty cool. He doesn't look too different from the other Gao Rangers except he's silver and blue and looks like a wolf. But sometimes that's all you need. We can also talk about his weapon, the Gao Hustler Rod, which is a rod, sniper rifle, and pool cube. What? God, I love Tokusatsu. This pool player thing isn't limited to just in suit though, as he essentially lives in a pool lounge ran by just this random guy, who's actually played by Roki's suit actor, which is kind of cool. This leads to a kind of funny relationship that teaches us things about Shirogane, such as him not being able to count apparently. Also, Shirogane, as you can see, has his own version of the Gao Ranger jacket, but it's all silver and kind of like black, sort of blue looking. I don't like it as much as the other 5 jackets, but I think it looks good on him and does a kind of good job tying him into the team, while also showing that he's not fully the same as the rest of them. I much prefer the outfit he had on inside the Roki armor though. Makes him look like a cool knight dude, which he kind of is, I guess. Moving on from the suit, because all of that would be left to talk about is his changer, which is just a phone in the shape of a wolf. Let's talk about his mech, Gao Hunter. I don't like it as much as Gao King or Muscle, but it's still kind of cool. That's unless we're talking about Gao Hunter Blue Moon, which is a better color combo with the blue crocodile. But that hasn't appeared in the show yet. My favorite thing about Gao Hunter in general, though, is that there's 2 different forms for when Roki or Shirogane controls it. There's Gao Hunter Evil and Gao Hunter Justice, respectively, with the horn changing to resemble either user's face. But that's just really cool, and it's something I wish that other Sentai mechs controlled by Rangers who switch from evil to good had. But there's one other example with Kyoryu Gold's mech. That's 12 years later, and it's not as cool of a change, sadly. Also, Gao Wolf can become a motorcycle for whatever reason. It's cool though. It makes for a decent shot in the intro, as Gao Silver is the first 6th Ranger in Sentai to actually get a title card in the opening, and also an appearance in the end. Before this, their names would still be in there, and maybe have a brief appearance of their suits in there as well, but Shirogane is the first one to get the title card with his credit on it by the 5 other Rangers in the show. Something that every single 6th Ranger after him got, unless they were just a suited character, but they still got to be in there with the rest of the team though. And now that we're done with that, let's move to what the depiction of the old Gao Rangers actually say about Gao Rangers' cultural inspiration. As Shirogane is from the Heian era, during this time the idea of the Onmyoji was in practice, which were a type of mystical advisors said to be able to see spirits in life. The main spirits they saw were yokai, beings that were said to live in objects or become people sometimes, helping or harming the humans they interacted with. Which when put like that, I think you can see the resemblance the yokai has to the power animals. Like even in this arc, you have one of the power animals, Gao Modillo, being a little soccer ball until he decides to come out with Gao Rhino in order to help defeat Roki. Again, the soccer form is crazy, but they go even beyond this. The Onmyoji would often use a type of pentagram in order to seal demons or yokai away, with each point of the star representing one of the 5 elements of Japanese mythology. Like how we have fire, water, earth, air, and sometimes aether, or basically a godly element. The Japanese and many other Asian countries have fire, water, earth, wood, and metal as their central elements. Each Gao Ranger kind of representing one of these elements, with Kakeru being fire, Gaku being wood, Kai being water, Sotaro being earth, and Sei being metal. Even this video by YouTuber Gaijin Gubo, where I first heard of the Onmyoji, uses a pentagram that actually has the Gao Ranger's colors on it. The colors don't exactly match up, why they use black for water, but you get the idea. The pentagram is also actually used in Gao Ranger, as it's what the previous Gao Rangers used to seal Roki. But to get into the last bit of the section, why is there a group of Gao Rangers from 1,000 years ago? There's no clear answer. They just happen to have tried to kill humanity 1,000 years ago, and now there's a group trying to kill humans now, with no true end in sight, as proven in the episode after Gao Silver's debut, as Shirogane immediately kills Ura in his debut. In the very next fight, a new Duke Orb, Onihime, is there. Like, sure, this is kind of a fluke as it's just a remnant of Ura fused with Sesue that gets defeated in the same episode it debuts, and Ura revives in the episode after that, but it also shows just the very random way that this battle with the Orcs could just continue. Just something worth thinking about. Let's talk about some other things real quick before we end the video. So I want to talk about 3 episodes in particular before we leave. 2 of them are focus episodes for Satoru and Kai that I feel kind of linked together in an interesting way. And the last is probably Gao Ranger's most iconic moment as a series. Let's start off with Satoru's episode, which is where we learn his backstory about being a failed sumo champion turned florist due to developing a crush on some random girl named Shiori. So when he finally sees her again, and she asks him to help run the flower shop with her, he genuinely considers giving him the Gao Ranger stuff for that. This is not only interesting because one, brings up the question of, can these people ever have normal lives? But also because part of the reason he even became a Gao Ranger is that he thought she wanted to be with a guy other than him. As he probably would have stayed if he thought she was still open to being with him. This is made worse since the whole thing with Shiori and stuff was actually a plot that the Orcs take Gao Bison from him, and almost get this crush killed. But through conquering his own fears, Satoru was able to save the day. As despite his own fear of heights, Satoru pushes his hand out in order to save Shiori. It actually creates a nice parallel between how Kai saved him in the past, showing how becoming a Gao Ranger has allowed Satoru to become a stronger person. Kai even giving Satoru some encouragement this episode by validating Satoru's feelings and hesitation when it seemed like Shiori genuinely liked him, and that he realized it was all an Orc plot. This gets really funny by the end, as it's revealed that she did like him, and has been waiting to see him again ever since he left to become a Gao Ranger. Her keeping those feelings inside at the end, as she roots for him to keep on fighting. It's a decent episode all around. I hope Shiori comes back up at some point, because I thought her relationship with Satoru was cute. Now, let's move on to like 9 episodes later with Kai's episode, where we learn that he used to be a bowling prodigy. Kinda random, but it is relevant as the org in this episode is the bowling org, which hits their enemy with a specific bowling technique Kai's mentor, Don Katayama, used to use in his tournament. But when the team asks Don to help them learn this new technique, Don denies them, as he sees Kai as nothing more than a quitter for leaving bowling to become a Gao Ranger. This is kinda crazy given that half his dialogue is never give up, but yeah, this is the one place where he just couldn't keep that up. What's more interesting though is Don in his own way is a quitter, giving up on trying to teach anyone his signature technique just because the one person he thought he could teach it to, Kai, left. But seeing Kai trying to teach himself the technique even to the point of almost messing up his hand like him, and truly showing his refusal to give up on things, Don decides to finally teach Kai the technique. He promises they'll find someone else to replace him, as he can't let his technique die with him. Create an overall pretty decent way to explore Kai's way of thinking, beyond it being a pretty decent catchphrase. I also would bring this episode up anyway, because I think Kai killing the monster of the week with a bowling ball is pretty cool. They even do this with a new form of Gao King that has Gao Hunter's arms called absolutely nothing because they were too lazy to come up with a name. That's not a joke, by the way. The narrator literally comments on them not having come up with it yet. But let's put the joke aside and talk about the final episode of this batch of Gao Ranger, the one where they literally all die except Red and Silver. The reason I like this one so much is that it heavily focuses on the show's constant message of never giving up in the face of adversity, and how kind of powerful that is. I mean, I could have also said that about the last episode we just talked about, but shut up. Seeing Kakeru, this guy who's always happy-go-lucky and positive, generally feel like everything is hopeless after watching all his friends die, generally hits for me as much as seeing him get back up and protect people after hearing the cries of children. An action that inspires the 4 dead Gao Rangers to give up their chance to properly pass on. He gave Kakeru the edge he needs to win the battle by creating the super cool Falcon Summoner, causing Kakeru to fight even harder against Ura as he knows his friends are truly watching over him as he does it. Then he finally summons Gao Falcon, who's kind of more of a phoenix to be honest, but shut up, the other 4 Gao Rangers come back to life and all Kakeru can do is just fall down in relief and feels to see his friends all alive after they died pretty gruesomely. Then the lies they say to him and how they communicate their personalities, with Sotaro questioning how they're all alive at all, Kai bragging about how he escaped death, Sei talking about how Red and Silver's unwillingness to give up saved them, and Gaku talking to Red about how he can't get rid of him that easy. It's all so gas! Especially with the song Eyes of Justice playing in the background, as this is all happening before they form the mech it was made for, Gao Icarus, which is somehow both cool and weird looking at the same time. And kills Ura with a bicycle kick with the soccer player like leg. Sure, the episode was kind of formulaic. You could kind of feel the consequences of how basic all the characters are, how their deaths don't hit as hard as they probably should. But I can't really care because everything I'm seeing is so cool, and a little bit of connection I was able to build with these characters, as seen by everything else I talked about in this video and the last video, just pushed through and made me still feel something. Like I asked at the end of the last video whether or not my opinion on Gao Ranger would improve here, and while I don't think I can fully say it improved, I think I like it a bit more, which is honestly more important at the end of the day. Hopefully my like of it can grow even more in the next video, where we review the final 19 episodes and send our Gao Warriors on their merry way. Hope I'll see you in the final Gao Ranger review.
ついにプレイステーションにもオルグたちの魔の手が。ガオレンジャー出動だ。テレビと同様巨大化するオルグたち、君はどう戦うのか。プレイステーションガオレンジャー、そして愛とも。
Welcome to the third and final video of the Gao Ranger review series. We have a lot to cover with the final one, so let's just get into it by talking about the story. After Gao Rangers died and came back and defeated Ura, another more evil Duke Orc has come to take his place in Rasetsu. I'm watching for a weird fixation on eating things. So it's up to the Gao Rangers to defeat him, alongside figuring out to deal with this random kid named Futaro, who keeps showing up and seems to have a strange connection with the power animals. This stretch of this series is kind of weird to talk about, because on one hand, it's probably the weakest on an episode-to-episode basis. Like, the first arc isn't great, but it's also the introduction to the show and Sentai as a franchise trying to do some different stuff, just the heavy including the power animals and different mech pieces, which unlike shows nowadays have a formula to copy off of and iterate on in terms of that stuff, Gao Ranger doesn't, because it had to create that formula in the first place. The second arc was considerably better, playing off some of the stuff that set up in the first arc, character-wise, and expanding the lore of the series, alongside introducing the GOAT, Roki, and Shirogane. But this arc doesn't really have a lot of new stuff to offer, so the show just kind of goes on autopilot. Like, not to say there aren't any good episodes here, or any funny or cool moments, like the Christmas episode is actually pretty funny, and this joke of Totomu getting flustered by Shirogane, causing him to fall down and transform upside down is also sort of funny. But you can tell by this point, they're just kind of running out of steam. Many episodes just feeling like elongated fight scenes. The most egregious case is the episode where the Org literally makes the mechs fight each other for 20 minutes, or the 3-episode battle from Rasetsu in the 4-part finale. Like, again, these episodes aren't terrible. I'd somewhat defend the latter two instances, but they do make the show a slog to watch, especially if you watch them back to back like I did. That's not even to mention how repetitive the show has gotten with certain plot points. Like, between episode 32 and the finale, it definitely loses the ability to transform some of the power animals like 3 different times, and it would be 6 if I include the instances of this happening in the previous 2 arcs. Again, to be fair, these all happen in different ways, and this is the first time that I showed to have an element like the power animals, and thus using this idea elevates their importance, but it loses all weight when it happens honestly more than like once in the show, if I'm being honest. Like, if it just happened in the first arc and final 2 episodes, then maybe it'd be fine. But it feels so weird when you already watched the show and milk that idea for drama not even 10 episodes early. Despite these complaints, I think the actual themes and ideas what Gao Ranger is going for are at their best here, even the reused plot points. To talk about that though, we'll start by talking about Rasetsu, the main villain of this arc. Rasetsu is the best villain in Gao Ranger, if Roki didn't exist. But they are the best villain in Gao Ranger doesn't become a 2001 Japanese pretty boy, as Rasetsu's overall goal is to just eat things. Something that's weird because it doesn't seem to benefit the orgs in any way at all. Like, compare Rasetsu's desire to Shuten and Ura's desire, of just killing the Gao Rangers and using Roki's power to also kill the Gao Rangers respectively. While the two of them fight exclusively to shift the scales in terms of the orgs' never-ending battle with the Gao warriors, Rasetsu at the end of the day always prioritize their chance to get a snack. Their idea is put into every piece of their character, from their dialogue where they talk about how the Rangers look like food to them, their weapon being a literal knife and fork, the most obvious part being their design, where they're made up of so many mouths they got 2 different voice actors to play the only 2 mouths the production team could probably get to move. This even plays into the selection of orgs, as the first 2 orgs he picks are Charcoal Grill Org, because they can grill really well, and Blacksmith Org, so they can turn the Beast King swords into spoons. Beyond this though, I think it's really interesting how the show uses Rasetsu's view on what is and isn't worth eating as a way to speak on the org's nature. As in their first scene, Rasetsu says they want to eat dreams, and humans cannot live without them. A detail that only indicates that eating through stuff is the way that Rasetsu is going to deal with the Gao Rangers, but also how the orgs view humans as a whole, as pathetic creatures that hold on to feeling that the orgs are above, or more accurately ridicule and ignore. This idea is exemplified perfectly in the Gao God arc, in the final battle against Rasetsu. As in the Gao God arc, Rasetsu tricks this kid named Futaro, who's a human version of Gao God from last video, to turn against the Gao Rangers by showing them how the orgs are created due to all the trash and waste left behind by humans. A fact that he uses to judge humanity as not worth saving, because they are the architects of their own destruction, and when willing to betray each other, they get ahead. Something that gets really interesting considering that we literally see him do the exact same thing to the org. As throughout the entire arc, we see Rasetsu abuse Yabaiba and Suesue because they got trash cooking. How does some random ninja org come up with a plan to make Suesue cut off her own horn, mutilating herself just so that Rasetsu can steal Totomu, but she can actually cook very well. A loyal soldier within the org army having her life entirely forfeited, not even for the benefit of the org race, but for the benefit of Rasetsu. Because again, all betraying Suesue earns Rasetsu is just a better cook at Totomu, who starting from this point, there's a parallel between her and Totomu, as like Suesue, Totomu cooks for the Gao Rangers. Instead of it being a form of indentured servitude, like in Sweat's case, it's done out of the genuine friendship she has with our Gao warriors. Their genuine feelings for her and each other, pulling them through all the Rasetsu schemes. When Rasetsu convinces Gao God to leave humanity, he takes power animals away. The Gao Rangers think about giving up. Both of them decide not to, because even if humans are the cause of the Org's existence, they can still change and do better in the future. Humanity is worth the effort and worth fighting for. This is done really well with Gao Silver, as he has the most reason to give up, as Gao God, who was his friend in the past, gives Shirogane the chance to finally just give up on life and get to rest in peace with all his friends from 1,000 years ago. But ultimately he refuses, since even though everyone he cares about is dead, he has new people he cares about and needs to fight alongside. He only gets rid of the self-hatred he always carried around due to his own mistakes, so that he can fight for a future that goes beyond the mistakes of humanity as a whole. Causing Gao God to fight alongside the team, respecting the Rangers' convictions, and Gao Silver getting a cooler looking version of his mech, Gao Hunter Blue Moon, something that Totomo can repay in kind. When the Gao Ranger brought to the underworld, the Org's trying to save her, and through her prayers, they're saved. Even when Rasetsu becomes giant and destroys their base, the Gao Rangers all think Totomo is dead, Cocker runs at them in respect for his friend, thus giving Totomo a chance to help save them again, and then defeat Rasetsu with the cool mech Gao Contoris. The Gao Rangers all pleading their dedication to keep on fighting regardless of how many different Orgs may come. That's because their bond with Totomo is just that strong, after everything they've been through together. Which, when compared to Rasetsu, who basically died alone to the Yobaiba's, while ultimately half-hearted act defiance against Rasetsu by having Totomo, the person they killed Yobaiba's best friend for, make a special dish based on a recipe source they created. After Rasetsu shows how important the feelings of Rasetsu and the Orgs in general look down upon are. Since if Rasetsu could ever for a second respected his feelings, they couldn't get the taste of cooking they've always wanted. Instead, they're just another dead Duke Org. The idea of the feeling that Orgs look down upon and ignore being their downfall is made more interesting and brought all the way home by the final 7 episodes of the series. Gao Ranger does an interesting thing after Rasetsu dies. As most other Sentai the last one I reviewed in this format, Goseiju, would immediately go into the next and final villain being introduced. But instead of that, Gao Ranger has this very brief period of essentially a cold war between the Gao Rangers and less existing Org Yobaiba, as the Gao Rangers try to find and destroy the thing that bursts the Orgs, that being the Org Master, while Yobaiba successfully hides it from them. A kind of boring struggle. I feel like it adds to this very idea of the battle against the Orgs being a very endless struggle. Just when the end of the Gao Rangers journey seems near its end, it just keeps on going because the remaining Org doesn't want to fight them head on. They just fight 2 more random Orgs before starting to contemplate how they want to live their lives when they can finally put all this Gao Ranger stuff behind them. A thought that brings mixed emotions, as even though throughout the series we see multiple instances of them thinking about their past lives and whether or not they want to return to them, now it ain't that easy. He's them processing it in different ways. As Conqueror, even though he loved being a veterinarian, he has the value of being the leader of this team and working alongside them, a feeling that he'll never get again. Gaku decides he wants to go back into the Air Force, but also acknowledges that because he basically went missing in action and become part of the Gao Rangers, he probably has to start all over again in terms of being a pilot. Kai and Sotoro decide to become co-owners of the restaurant, but also acknowledge that won't be easy as they try boast and proclaim. Sage is going to go back to martial arts school and then go back home, after that becoming a normal girl essentially. Shirogane, due to being 1,000 years old, has nowhere to go. Just kind of filling up space until he naturally dies as a human. Totomo gets the worst of this, since unlike Shirogane, who at the very least could go and live a full life away from all this Gao Ranger stuff, Totomo can't. Whether or not she's a conscious being is entirely dependent on whether or not the Orgs are around to fight, something that could take as long as 1,000 years to occur again. But to not stew in that morbid thought for too long, the 3 Duke Orgs and Suesue have all come back to life, are acting kinda weirdly like the Gao Rangers and Totomo. They start fighting together in unison, have a fake version of the Gao Rangers' finisher sword, and even defer to Suesue as their leader. Which is really weird given how all 3 of these guys treated her before now. Like, even if we don't talk about what Rasetsu did to her, the other 2 didn't really mess for her either. Even Yobaiba mentions that, but again, this shows the Org's flaw of basically throwing away their identities. Like in this arc, it's revealed the stone statue that they called the Org Master throughout the show is actually just a tool they used to create Orgs and allow the Duke Orgs to have supremacy over the rest of the Orgs. Something they say while letting Suesue be their boss, person who was all 3 of these guys slaves before. They're letting their tool turn them to pawns just because it can make them more powerful by eventually allowing them to merge into the Senki, the ultimate Org. This is contrasted heavily by the Gao Ranger, who I said before are embracing their identities as people more and more now. For example, in the episode after they all get beaten up by the Duke Orgs, Conqueror decides to go and try and fight the Orgs on his own, because he feels he has to do that as their leader. He wants to help them achieve their dreams sooner, and as a leader, he should be able to do some things on his own. However, when he particularly gets beaten up for the Orgs, have his friends tell him that he shouldn't have done that, instead fight together with the rest of them, as his value as their leader comes from how he's able to work with the rest of them. That's not even to mention Conqueror has his own dreams that can't be achieved if he just lets himself die trying to help his team. In addition to they all keeping their battles against the Duke Orgs, and in the episode all of them getting the strength to deal with them on the back of them having things to achieve beyond this battle, something the Orgs will never understand. Then they fall back on when having to fight the ultimate and final Org Senki, a being with no feelings or emotions at all, and is pretty much unbeatable, taking away all their powers and their abilities to turn into the Gao Rangers at all. Despite all of that, they fight against him anyway, and when he gives his final taunt after the supposed final chance to actually kill him fail, and for the first time proudly says their names to each other. As in this final battle, they're not just Gao Red, Yellow, Blue, Black, White, and Silver. They're Kakeru Shishi, Gaku Washio, Kai Sumezu, Sotaro Ishigome, Sei Taiga, and Tsukimaru Ogami, people with dreams who decide to come together and protect the world for no reason but their genuine desire to do so. And from this point forward, we'll be moving on to achieve their true dreams and desires. So after that, they defeat Senki, and they have a final tearful goodbye with Tsutomu. She can't join them, as like I said, as long as the orgs aren't around, she isn't needed in this world. Shirogane tries to join her as well, as he also doesn't really have a place in a world with no orgs. But he probably wouldn't survive the time it would take for her to wake up again, having to keep on living and find a place in the modern world, as he and the rest of his friends go and live their normal lives. So they're keeping in touch, even if it may be occasionally. As the show ends on this idyllic meeting of the Gao Ranger, Tsutomu, and Futaro, as an amazing song, Ozora E no Kaidan plays in the background. And with that, we're done with Gao Ranger. The show may not be the greatest Sentai or anything, but it's a show I couldn't really hate at the end of the day. Like, sure, it's sorta boring, and most of the cool aspects of the show have been done way better by the, like, almost 25 years worth of shows after it. But at the same time, there's still some fun to be had here, with a likable cast of characters, an amazing soundtrack, whether it be its opening, its ending, its background music, or even just this random song that never even got to play in the show. And it's genuine, just heartfelt every aspect of it. Even when it's plagiarizing itself or struggling to do a concept that other writers, including the guy who would write most of the show, Chuki Tatagami, would later realize in much better ways. So yeah, I like Gao Ranger. Not just me though. Thanks for watching the Gao Ranger review series. Hope to see you in another review series or just, well, regular review. Me, Guy Sokoa, signing out.
Hyakujuu Sentai Gaoranger
野生の魂と魂が今響き合う五感を研ぎ澄ませ眠れる力が開くガオラオガオラオガオラオガオラオガオレンジャー気高い雄たけびを上げろ地球の命守るためにガオもっとガオ強く110戦隊ガオレンジャーガオ吠えろ
皆さんお付き合いくださってありがとうございました。
本当に1年間ありがとうございました。それではまた会いましょう。
それじゃ
じゃあね。
バイバイ。
じゃあね。
百獣戦隊ガオレンジャージャッキ退散ガオガオ